Once upon a time, in the depths of a snow-blanketed winter, a queen sat by her ebony-framed window, stitching a garment with fingers numbed by the cold. As she worked, she pricked her finger and 3 drops of blood fell upon the snow on the windowsill. The crimson drops gleamed like rubies against the stark white, and she murmured a wish. If only I could have a child with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. In time her wish was granted. She bore a daughter who was a living embodiment of that dream. The child's skin was as pale as fresh snow, her lips as vivid as the queen's blood, and her hair as dark as the ebony frame of the window. She was named Snow White, but the queen's joy was short-lived. Soon after the child's birth, the queen passed away, leaving the king and his infant daughter alone in their grief. The king did his best to care for his daughter, but his duties often pulled him away. Snow White grew up sweet-natured and beautiful but lonely. Years passed, and the king remarried a woman of extraordinary beauty. Yet beneath her flawless exterior lay a heart as cold as ice and a mind consumed by vanity. This new queen possessed a magical mirror, a gift from a sorcerer which she consulted daily. Standing before it, she would ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror always replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." These words fed her arrogance, for she could not bear the thought of anyone surpassing her beauty. As Snow White grew, her radiance blossomed. By the time she reached her 7th year, her beauty surpassed even that of the queen. One day, when the queen posed her daily question, the mirror's answer was not what she expected. "My queen, you are fair, it is true. But Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen's heart burned with jealousy. Her envy turned her love for beauty into hatred for Snow White. Unable to endure the girl's presence, she summoned a huntsman and commanded him to take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. To prove his deed, he was to return with her heart. The huntsman led Snow White into the forest, but as she knelt before him, her innocent eyes brimming with fear, he found himself unable to harm her. "Run, child," he whispered. "Run far and never return." To deceive the queen, he killed a boar and brought its heart as proof. Snow White fled, running deeper into the forest than she thought possible. The trees loomed like giants, their twisted branches clawing at her hair and dress. Terrified and exhausted, she stumbled upon a tiny cottage nestled among the trees. Everything inside was small but immaculate, as though it belonged to another world. The table was set with 7 plates of food, and 7 small beds were neatly arranged in a row. Unable to resist her exhaustion, Snow White tasted a bit of bread and wine from each plate before collapsing across the 7 little beds and falling into a deep sleep. When the 7 dwarfs returned from their day's labor in the mines, they were astonished to find the beautiful maiden. Though cautious, her story of betrayal and innocence moved them. They offered her shelter, warning her of the queen's malice. Snow White promised to keep their home and hearts safe, living with them as a sister. In return, she helped tend to their household, filling it with warmth and joy. Meanwhile, the queen, believing Snow White to be dead, once again consulted her mirror. But the mirror revealed the truth. Snow White, beyond the mountains tall, living with the 7 dwarfs, is still the fairest of them all. The queen's rage knew no bounds. She vowed to destroy Snow White with her own hands. Disguising herself as an old peddler, she visited the dwarf's cottage. Snow White, trusting and kind, allowed the woman to lace her bodice with a beautiful ribbon. But the queen tightened it so much that Snow White collapsed, unable to breathe. When the dwarfs returned, they loosened the laces just in time to save her. Undeterred, the queen devised another plan. This time she fashioned a poisoned comb. Again disguised as a harmless old woman, she persuaded Snow White to try it. The moment the comb touched her hair, Snow White fell to the ground. The dwarfs removed the comb, reviving her once more. Snow White, though frightened, could not bring herself to suspect the kindly old women who came to her door. The queen's fury grew. For her final attempt, she crafted a poisoned apple, its red skin gleaming like temptation itself. Once again disguised, she offered the apple to Snow White. "One bite," she coaxed, "will bring you more happiness than you can imagine." Snow White hesitated but succumbed to the queen's gentle persuasion. As her teeth broke the apple's skin, she collapsed lifeless. This time the dwarfs could not revive her. They mourned deeply, placing her in a glass coffin so her beauty would never fade. Each day they stood vigil, unable to let her go. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The seasons changed and the forest around them seemed to mourn with them, its vibrant colors dulling. One day, a prince traveling through the forest stumbled upon the coffin. Struck by Snow White's beauty, he begged the dwarfs to let him take her to his castle, where she could be honored forever. Though reluctant, the dwarfs saw the prince's sincerity and agreed. As the coffin was lifted, the jostling dislodged the piece of apple from Snow White's throat. She gasped for air, her eyes fluttering open. The prince, overjoyed, declared his love. Moved by his sincerity and devotion, Snow White agreed to marry him. The wicked queen, still consulting her mirror, learned of Snow White's revival and impending marriage. Overcome with fury and humiliation, she attempted to crash the wedding. But her identity was revealed and she was sentenced to a fitting punishment. Red-hot iron shoes were placed upon her feet, and she was forced to dance in them until her life ebbed away. Snow White and her prince ruled with kindness and wisdom, their love and fairness bringing prosperity to the land. The dwarfs, her lifelong friends, visited often, and their bond remained unbreakable. Snow White's tale became a cherished legend, told in hushed tones by the fireside, a reminder of the triumph of goodness and love over vanity and malice. And so they lived happily ever after.